Women, an alcoholic dad, and a questionable mentor. That is where we left off last time when the greatest composer of all time was being a massive simp to two girls that didn't want him. Now, go watch part 1 to get caught up, or I'll just give you a recap, you lazy fuck. Now, Beethoven is born in Bonn, Germany to an alcoholic dad and mom that cared but didn't do shit. Pretty unlucky spawn if you ask me. Now, Beethoven was a prodigy from the start, composing from the age of 12 and acquiring acquaintances from the likes of Wolfgang Mozart, Joseph Haydn, and of course Polo G.
I'm Piano G. And all I use is a piano beat.
Now, moving to Vienna soon after, Beethoven was glazed more than an athlete appearing in front of a Make-A-Wish kid.
This is your pilot speaking. For my final wish, I'll be flying today's plane.
Oh, hell no.
Now, he started playing his own works and realized, hey, I ain't dog shit, and this is where we left off. Now, after publishing 3 trios for piano, violin, and cello opus 1, this marked what many historians believe as the beginning of Beethoven's 3 periods of work, distinctly categorized by Wilhelm von Lenz, starting off with the early period. Now, the earlier first period consisted mainly of chamber music, music composed for small ensembles of instrumentalists, or those who can't afford a big home. Now, for Beethoven, the instrument of choice was of course piano. Now, starting in roughly 1794 and spanning 8 years to 1802, Beethoven's style was greatly influenced by the foundation set by Haydn and Mozart. Now, this was the classical era, and so none of this hood music and violence you see today. Now, this period saw a significant output of piano works, including numerous sonatas that were amongst his most original and technically diverse compositions. Now, some notable early sonatas include Piano Sonata No. 8 in C minor, opus 13, aptly named Pathétique, for when he was judging my Valorant skills, and Piano Sonata No. 14 in C sharp minor, opus 27, No. 2, known as Moonlight Sonata. Now, this particular piece was dedicated to Countess Giulietta Guicciardi, a young aristocratic woman that was his pupil. Now, during times over their lessons together, Beethoven had become, for lack of a better word, a simp, and tried to run a 70-yard Hail Mary into the end zone. Now, unfortunately, it did not work. Her father denied him like US Border Patrol, and Beethoven was sad. Now, apart from failed sonatas, he published additional works of symphonies, concertos, and string quartets that rounded out the end of this early period. Now, even though this is still considered classical, Beethoven began sprinkling his own pizzazz. Dynamics were suddenly less flat than My Girlfriend, which was foreshadowing to his distinct style later on. Now, what truly marked the end of this period was the Heiligenstadt Testament in 1802, a book published by Beethoven with a 78% approval by Google users. Y'all do realize that Beethoven isn't even alive. Now, this was a significant turning point as Beethoven, who's a former hearing world champion, was now deafer than a can of beans, and this book addresses frustration to his brother Carl and Johann. The clock was now ticking in the race against his worsening condition, moving into the middle period. Now, Beethoven's second period was also known as the heroic period due to the exploration of the self. While that does not mean that he likes men, more and more of his own individual soul was put into the music. Now, this period kicked off with Piano Sonata No. 14 in C sharp minor, known as Quasi una Fantasia, opus 27 No. 2, and Beethoven's Symphony No. 3 in E flat major, opus 55, known as Eroica. Now, the heroic part of this period was illustrated with a sense of triumph and struggle, which no doubt took inspiration from all the people dying in the famines. Now, while in the early period where he was more concerned whether his music would fit in, this period he said fuck it. Works became longer and more substantial compared to those in the preceding era, and music from this period featured an unprecedented variety of emotional expressions. Now, take Eroica for example, which is one of his most defining symphonies that departed from previous forms, making the slow transition from classical into romanticism. Now, in this time period, Beethoven tried his luck again with another girl. Now, clearly not learning from his mistakes, Beethoven pursued another one of his former students, Therese Melfetti. Now, in 1810, a 40-year-old Beethoven proposed to a 90-year-old Melfetti, and he did this simply by becoming an average Roblox player.
Claiming that I'm engaging in simulated child endangerment conversations. What?
Now, in reality, Beethoven wrote another piece, Bagatelle in A minor, which unfortunately was rejected, and this went on to be known as the legendary Für Elise. Now, by 1814, not only was Duke Dennis born, but Beethoven's hearing loss progressed to the point of complete deafness. Now, this marked the start of the late period. Now, you might be wondering if Beethoven is completely deaf. How is he composing? Well, in addition to having extensive knowledge on music, Beethoven would quote-unquote hear through physical vibrations. Now, he would bite down on a metal rod attached to his piano while he played, and the vibrations would be sent to his jaw and directly to his skull. Now, even with this egregious disability, he still managed to put forth a considerable amount of pieces in the late period, starting in 1815. Now, this period is characterized by reflection, introspection, and other synonyms of sad that I could find. Now, confronting the thought of death, Beethoven's works became relatively more quiet compared to his previous heroic pieces. Now, this can be seen for smaller amounts of individuals meant to play, including string quartets that only have 4 people or even just solo performances. Now, concertos were no more, symphonies barely saw the light, and Beethoven was going through a midlife crisis. Now, nearly at the age of 50, Beethoven was going through a hard emotional period where his personal appearance was degraded, social life diminished, and upon the death of his brother, Caspar Karl, Beethoven became swamped with legal disputes with his dead brother's wife. Now, his health soon started to disintegrate as well, starting in October of 1816. But this would not stop Beethoven. At the lowest of the low, he would produce one of the greatest pieces that would expand the genre of orchestral music, the Ninth Symphony. Now, in 1818, his health began to recover and he began sketches of his masterpiece. Now, in November of 1822, the Philharmonic Society of London offered a commission for his symphony, to which Beethoven was delighted. Now, just a year later, in 1823, 3 of his most notable works in this period was published: the Missa Solemnis, the Diabelli Variations, and the Ninth Symphony. Now, he was awarded by the King of France, Louis XVIII, a heavy gold medallion for his publications, to which he traded to a villager for 3 emeralds. Now, on the 26th of March 1827, Beethoven finally joined Juice WRLD and King Von as one of the greatest musicians and composers to ever live, concluding his life at the age of 56. Well, did you learn something? Laugh at any point of the video. Please consider subscribing as we're closing in on 10K. Yeah! Let's get it!
Fuck that bitch, leave that hoe where I found her. Whole lot of paraphernalia on the counter.